Hello again, Professor. I'd like to thank you again for allowing this accommodation. I'm really looking forward to being able to type with two hands in a couple weeks, but I appreciate your willingness to allow me some different options, I guess. So this is my data or district data profile on the College Community School District, thinking more specifically from the Prairie Point Middle School and ninth grade academy perspective. If you take a look at our district enrollment, enrollment has been increasing over the last 3 years, which is something we've definitely seen day to day. The building I'm in was brand new in 2009-10 school year, and we were then had room for growth, and we've now reached capacity in our 5th year. So definitely a growing district, and you can see that here in the numbers. I'm noticing that although our minority population is increasing, it's very slight, and our numbers are very low compared to the state numbers of minorities. We're around 15%, and the state's around 20%. So we're a little lower there, but I think our students more come from an upper middle class, and so that's not really surprising there. We're not as urban as the Cedar Rapids school districts. Looking at our AYP data here, we have 4th grade reading at 72.9%, 4th grade math at 80%, reading in the 8th grade is at 75.88%, and math is at 82.35%, and then reading and math in 11th grade, surprisingly, are very even. So what's surprising to me is that reading is lower in proficiency, and I know that in the assignment you talked about proficiency being kind of a abstract term here, not really given much validity, but those numbers, looking at reading and math, reading being lower in the 4th grade and in the 8th grade, and then leveling off and being the same as math in the later years of high school. So that's interesting to me. Obviously, we are not as high as some of the highest districts. I noticed that there were quite a few 100%, tended to be from the smaller districts. I mean, with populations of 30 or something like that, I believe the spreadsheet said. And then we're well above the lowest. But what was interesting to me about is this 8th grade reading, where they didn't have anybody above 88%, and then this low of 25% was pretty shocking. And even then in the state numbers, 8th grade reading at 65%, I think that's a trend, is that 8th grade reading scores were low, and I just wonder why that would be. Comparing to the state numbers, we are above the state in everything except for this 4th grade reading, which we're just a couple percentages below. I really don't know how that really affects us. I know we've talked about the data before as a building level, rarely as a district level. It'll be addressed in our district meetings, but definitely as an administrator, this will be something that I want to be aware of, how our district's doing and how my building is doing. So when we look at the AYP, I kind of talked about how those percentages vary and how we compared to the state. And then the demographics and graduation data that we find, I'll talk here about our student data. What surprised me was that our graduation rate was less than the state percentages. That was a little shocking to me. I know that this is something we've talked about in the district, is that our graduation rate is not where we want it to be. Obviously, some schools are having 100% graduate. Some schools are only having a little over half of their students graduate. But I think still, when you look at the numbers that we have in the 8th grade, and then by graduation year, those numbers drop drastically, and I think that's an area of concern for us. Looking at free and reduced lunch, we have almost 30% at free and reduced lunch, which is below the state average. But like I said, that's not super surprising given our population. Obviously, there are some schools out there with much higher rates and some schools out there with much lower rates. Our ELL population is very low. And I'm not exactly sure why this is. I think if you look at the trends of the state, the EL data is definitely showing a lot of growth. And though it's growing in our district, it's still a very small percentage. And then our talented and gifted numbers, we're at 6%. The highest there was 65%, which I thought was quite a bit. And I wondered more into that school. And then the lowest was 0%. Looking at the state report cards and seeing the schools that were on there, it was interesting to see that only 41 out of the 348 school districts were identified as districts in need. But then when you look at the amount of schools, it's 47% of the schools. And so when you looked at the list, all of the Cedar Rapids schools, and not all, but a lot of the Cedar Rapids schools, a lot of the Des Moines schools, a lot of the Prairie schools, and Iowa City schools were on there. And so I'm wondering if that has something to do with the number of districts being low, but then the number of schools being higher. As far as what kinds, I don't know the whole. I mean, I don't know all of the smaller schools in the state, but I know I saw a couple from where I was from in Northeast Iowa. Saw a lot of the bigger schools. A lot of school districts had multiple schools on there. If you looked at the school list, our district was listed. We have almost all of our buildings on there. It hasn't, I mean, day to day and year to year, it hasn't really, I would say as a teacher, I haven't felt the impact of this. We have met one of the proficiencies and are on for another one. And I think some of our schools are on watch. So I haven't really felt that impact. I don't know if the other buildings, maybe the elementaries, feel that weighted more heavily. But it'll be interesting to see how, as the years go on, if that will continue on, if we'll continue to be on those watch lists. Free and reduced lunch. If we look at the free and reduced lunch numbers across the state, obviously they are on the rise. 41% being last year's percentage for free and reduced. I'm wondering why reduced lunch is declining and free lunch is increasing. I know in our last grad school class we read an article on a school, or a case study on a school that was taking more efforts to get families to fill out the paperwork necessary to be eligible for free and reduced lunch. Maybe that has something to do with it. If we look at the enrollment over the years, we're obviously going up, but then that free and reduced lunch percentage is going up. So maybe that says something about the increase, what populations are increasing. If we're having low SES families coming into our state. So I think that's definitely something to be aware of. And at the state level and at the district level, I don't think we've seen it impact us as much here, or at least I haven't felt the impact of that as much here in the last 5 years, but I'm sure I will notice those trends more in the years to come. And maybe other schools in our district are noticing those as well as the low or the free and reduced lunch population increasing. Our ELL students in Iowa are increasing as well. Not leaps and bounds percentage wise, but I mean, I think 2% is a significant amount to increase in 10 years when we're talking about students that aren't speaking the language of their peers for the most part. Comparing to our district, again, our district has very low numbers when it comes to ELL, but I think even with those low numbers, you have to be aware of those students and how you're going to best serve those students, and then how our district is going to react to the change in that demographic. How are we going to provide services for them? I know we've gone through 3 ELL teachers in the last 5 years, so providing consistency for those students is important as well. And I think that's just always something to be mindful of, is keeping in mind the students that you are serving. As far as the Iowa Job Outlook, that spreadsheet was valuable to look at. The forecast for fastest growing jobs was medical assistants, network system and data communication analysts, medical records and health information technicians, and database administrators. The forecast for occupations with the most jobs were home health aides, personal home care aides, and social and human services assistants. And I think the implications for that, for education, is that we need to be servicing students and readying students for anything. Um, Obviously, these jobs are more technical. I'm not sure all of these would require a 4-year college degree, so having that be an option, because I know with the price of college now, that's not an option for all students, and preparing them for at least some technical post secondary education is definitely a necessity. Um, the education reform, I think what we're going through now with these 21st century skills and content based learning or competency based learning, and focusing on the standards, I think all of that is important, but we need to look at the rounded student. Are we taking these students and are we molding them for anything? Because I think we can't pigeonhole them. We can't decide in the early elementary or middle school years what avenue they're going to take, but we need to provide education for a well-rounded student who is ready for a technical job or a 4-year degree or whatever they have after high school. So I think looking at this is valuable, but we still need to think of the whole student, and preparing all of our students to have opportunities after they're done with our education system. All in all, I think this was a great project to get to look at these numbers. As a math person, I really appreciate the numbers and the percentages, but just getting a better idea of what students we serve, and then looking at the state data as well. And seeing our areas that maybe we need to take a closer look at. And as an administrator, how would I do that? How would I have those conversations? Who are those conversations with? Do I need to be talking to somebody at the state level? I think that all depends on what school I'm at, but definitely valuable information to take a look at. Thank you again for the accommodation. I hope this is everything you were looking for.